What we'll do is, for everyone who's on here that doesn't know who we are, so myself and Mike, we're from Amsource, and we'll do a bit of an introduction, and then we'll hand over to Laïla. We'll literally take 5 minutes, and then Laïla will take over. So I'll just start sharing my screen. Hopefully everyone can see this.
Yep.
Good. So as mentioned, as you all know, this webinar is going to be on remote culture and collaboration. Myself, David, so I'm a practice lead at Amsource, and my colleague Mike, who's also a practice lead, he covers international. I mainly deal with the UK. Our last event, I know some of you on here will have been on there or might have even spoken on there, was on a masterclass on remote onboarding. So it's on YouTube. If you want it, we can send you the link, and we've got a blueprint which is on the next slide as well, because I know obviously most people are working remotely now, so onboarding is a big part of that, so we can send you that over if you'd like. This is the blueprint, so I'm not going to keep it on there for too long because it'll take you a while to read it, but these are the key takeaways that we got from that. And again, if anyone wants this, just ask and we'll send it over. So introducing our host for today, so Laïla. I won't go into too much detail because I'll let Laïla do an introduction herself, but yeah, she's obviously the head of culture and collaboration at MURAL, so a really good person to have for this webinar. And then this is what's going to be covered. So some of these points will go into more details than others, but it gives you a good idea of what we're going to be talking about. Remote first, distributed teams, hybrid companies, adaptation times, give a damn, united vision, best practice, and finishing with a Q&A session. Just on that Q&A session, we're happy for you to put questions in the chat as we go along if you want us to ask something, and at the end, if you want to ask the question, that's fine, or if you've got any questions at the end, just unmute yourself and ask Laïla. We're not going to be doing questions as we go along, because we find that that just makes the webinar last stages, and I'm sure people have other things to be doing. We'll do that, and then finally I will let Mike just introduce our next event, just give you a quick sum up. Mike?
Yeah, so one of the things we do as part of Amsource is we run a community page, devopsberlin.de, and we have a new partnership with Magic Sandbox. First thing that we're going to be introducing is a Kubernetes 101 masterclass and introduction, where you will be there'll be a theoretical session and then a live deployment of clusters. So if you've never looked at Kubernetes or you want to know a little bit more, these guys are a training company and they'll show you how to get it out of the box and spin up some clusters. And we're going to be doing more things with these guys as well, but this is the first thing that's happening on Wednesday the 7th, 5 o'clock UK time, and it'll all be done through Zoom like this. So yeah, if that's something of interest to you or any of your engineers, sign up. It's free, and I'm sure we'll all learn something. It's a lot more technical than this subject, but something a bit different.
Yeah, cool. Thanks, Mike. So obviously what we're all here for is Laïla. So I'll stop talking now, and I'll let Laïla take over. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike and David, and thank you everyone for joining today. I am going to share my screen because there are some visuals, and as David mentioned, can you all see it? Is it working? Great. You're on mute, but I'm taking that as a yes. So if it doesn't work, just unmute and let me know. All right, so hi everyone. What I'm using right here is MURAL, and this is a company that I work for, which is it's like a digital whiteboard. So some of you may have heard about digital whiteboards more and more as people are collaborating remotely. Honestly, it's really a tool that I've been using even before I joined MURAL. I used to work as a UX designer, and just having a place to collaborate visually was really, really useful for us as designers. And there are many non-designers who are using Mural these days to collaborate. And interestingly enough, I joined Mural as a remote work trainer for their clients, and then somehow stepped into this role of that is more related to people operations. So today, yeah, I will talk a little bit more about what I do at Mural, hoping to give you some examples of actions that you can take away and apply in your own teams, regardless of whether you're fully distributed or not. So we're going to talk about that a little bit more. I'll be sharing some examples. But yeah, so in my job title, I have both these words, right? Culture and collaboration. And they're words that we use a lot, but I wanted to kind of break them down a little bit, because sometimes when it comes to collaboration, I think it's a little bit more obvious, but specifically to this role that I have, that is also a role I think that more and more companies are going to be looking into hiring. Really, when it comes to culture, it's not just about the values or having a manifesto and saying, this is what we believe in, this is who we are, but it's really looking at the actions and the behaviors that people in the team have, starting with leadership, right? Because they act as example, and seeing how that trickles throughout the rest of the company. So there's a lot that can be said about different cultures. Some may be more playful, some may be more hardworking. You can be both. Some may be more international, some may be more local. But it's obviously not just culture from a geographical standpoint, but also from a kind of, the actual way that people treat each other or work together. So I will share a few of the things that makes our culture the way it is. And then when it comes to the collaboration side of things, that specifically, at least in my role, is really about knowing how to set up a workspace in this digital environment that we work in, that works for everyone, regardless of whether you're working, in an office or you're working remotely, because we are a hybrid team. But I'm looking at, what are the platforms that we're going to use to collaborate and to share information? How are we going to do that? What are the guidelines? How are we going to train people and teams to start, habitually using these tools and platforms in specific ways? And what processes will go with all of these, right? Because it's much more than just the tools. And what we've learned, and we're still learning, is that adapting to a different way of working is going to take time. Oops, seems like I muted myself. Sorry about that. So our culture is right now, I would say, more of a hybrid culture, and I'll go into that in a second. The way that Mural is distributed right now is becoming more and more global. So we are actually scaling really fast. Last time I gave this presentation, which was 2 weeks ago, we were 250 people. Now we're 270. So there's basically like 5 or 10 people joining every week as we're in this explosive growth phase. And also just got funding recently, which is great, from a Series B, but it just means there's a lot happening. So the company actually started in Argentina, in Buenos Aires. That's why you can see there's so many people based there. And then it started growing towards the US and San Francisco. We have a lot more employees and contractors spread across the US. I was the first person in Europe that they were working with, and now we have at least 20 people in Europe. We even have one person in Australia, and we're going to keep working in more global places. So of course that is going to create a few issues in the way that we're, not only issues, hopefully some positive things as well, right? But the way that we're organized is really going to shape the way that we interact. So in terms of teams, initially Mural was definitely a co-located team in Argentina. There was this one central office, and then it became this split team. And now we're in this hybrid working setup, which is actually this mix, right, of people working in the office, although right now the offices are closed, of course, because of COVID. So we do have 2 offices in San Francisco and in Buenos Aires, but we also have more and more people working remote. So technically, from a technical perspective, right now it's as if we were fully distributed, but actually we are a hybrid company, which means that as part of my role, I have to look at how to, you know, understand what is the culture in the office and what is the culture for people who work remotely, and how can we bring those two together so that we can work in a better way. And so before COVID-19, definitely, you know, we had much more presence in the offices, but now as we're growing more and more, as I showed you on the map before, the remote side of things is becoming bigger and bigger. And we do like to think of ourselves as a remote first company. And we've also created a software that is helping other companies collaborate remotely in a visual way, right? But it also means that we have to kind of practice what we preach. If we're telling other companies, this is how you work, this is how you do design thinking, this is how you do agile methods, this is how you, you know, can communicate remotely, we have to make sure that we're doing the same things internally. So I'll start out just by giving you some examples of what we do internally in terms of communication, collaboration. Some of these things may seem very obvious to you because you may be doing them already, but you know, I don't know everybody's situation here, so hopefully there's something new as well for others. In terms of how we are communicating on a day-to-day basis, we definitely use Slack the most internally. We're not using email as much unless you are customer facing. So we have Slack. I'm actually in the process of writing like a 4 or 5 page Slack guideline on like etiquette and tips and how to communicate better, because it is becoming more overwhelming. One of the things that we've done, you know, initially we had just one general channel, but as we have different needs for different employees in different regions, we've now expanded these regional channels, for example, to represent everyone. Of course, there's many more channels and we're also like cleaning them up, but this is one helpful thing definitely to think about, you know, when it comes to multicultural teams as well, from a geographical perspective, and making sure that they have a place to go to without being overwhelmed with all the other messages. The other thing is meetings. I think this is a pain point for many companies. We actually just published a blog post. I don't have the link right now, but if you do go on our blog, we wrote, we partnered with another company that helped us write a blog post on how to have meetings that basically suck less. There's so many ways to interact with people, and I really think that online facilitation, and this is a whole other topic, I'm going on a tangent, but online facilitation is a skill that more and more people will need as we are working this way. But the important thing is also to know how to leverage this asynchronous way of working, meaning that we don't all have to be online at the same time, especially with like this, you know, 9-hour time zone difference that we have currently, which is also going to continue growing. We need to learn how to leverage that. So the important question we're asking ourselves now is, do we even need a meeting in the first place? Maybe we don't, you know, so we're trying to figure out ways using not just Mural, but other tools as well to figure out how to collaborate better. And generally what I've seen, not only at Mural, but also at the company that I was working at previously, that was a fully distributed team, but we were only 10. So it was a little bit different in terms of organization. Generally having about 2 to 3 hours where you overlap with your teammates is enough if you need to sync on anything. Anything beyond that is also fine, but again, you know, trying to be reasonable and respectful about people's time zones and their lifestyles is super important. And I think this is something that many international companies are still juggling. So trying to find that overlap is something that I can definitely recommend, and making the most of that time together. The other thing that we have done, and that a lot of remote first companies do because it's so helpful, is to really document your processes. So we used to have a very scrappy looking wiki in Google Sites, which was really not the ideal platform. We've now, since early this year, moved everything to Confluence, which I can definitely recommend, although there's a lot of other platforms that you can use. I know Buffer uses Notion, for example, and there's you know, some companies like Automatic, who created WordPress, they use their own platform for this. But having a space where you can document, where every team has their own, you know, set of pages where they can explain, this is how we work, this is who we are, this is what we do. So some examples also of you know, more public facing information, for example, that I'll do in my role is having all the holidays put into the wiki to show these are the holidays that you can take. If you are based in these countries, of course, you can take the day off when you're working there, if it's a public holiday. Another thing that we've started using it for is a monthly newsletter for the employees. So ours is called Eye on Mural. And the great thing about also putting it in Confluence is that it kind of works like a Google Docs where people can comment directly in the newsletter. So it's not sent by email. It's really like a more interactive kind of newsletter. You can react to things, you can add comments and observations, and makes it much more editable for everyone. This is something more related to meetings and types of ways that teams can come together and meet. So I'm not using this framework at the moment anymore, but when I initially started the people operations team at Mural over a year ago, and we were far fewer people than today, we were maybe 4 or 5 people. When I was onboarding teammates, I would show them so the first top row in orange were the type of meetings that we have within our team only, to make them understand how often we would meet, which platform we would use, and maybe some of these were automated by an external platform, so we didn't even actually have to meet in person. So the first one was actually a bot in Slack asking us a question automatically every day, checking in with us and seeing how we were feeling on a scale of 1 to 5 and what we were working on. And then the last row shows who in the team is going to be part of this kind of meeting. So there's many different types of meetings, of course, and one common best practice in distributed teams, which I think also works in hybrid teams, is to have a weekly one-on-one with your manager. But of course, once you're a manager and your team you have a lot of direct reports reporting to you, you may want to move that weekly one-on-one to make it every 2 weeks or maybe even once a month. But it was super useful because people immediately could see when we were going to meet, how, what we're going to use and why. I think the why is super important. And I think if you don't even know why you're meeting, then there's no point in having that meeting. So this was really helpful for me as well as a manager at the time to understand what the purpose of this all was. And another kind of documentation, if you can call it that, is having a separate calendar for events that are for the whole company. So what you'll see here actually in green, I've added, so Google Calendar has this really nice feature that you can add all the whatever public holidays of whatever country. So I can choose many different calendars. So in green, I can see all the public holidays in the countries where people of our team are based in. In pink, I believe, are my own personal meetings and conferences. And then in purple are all the company event meetings. So these are, well, they're not meetings, they can be webinars, they can be workshops, they can be demos, they can be the all hands company meetings. So these are, this is a calendar that anybody in the company can see and can decide to join. And again, very useful to have that, to see exactly like what there is out there without having to invite people. You just share the link of the calendar. So now moving on, so that was all about, how we communicate, collaborate, and shows a little bit of just some very simple things that we've set up that have been super useful. And here I wanted to show maybe the more human aspect of certain rituals that we have and habits that we started doing that really make our culture come to life. So I'm sure many of you may have heard of all hands company meetings. I think this was the first time we reached 100 people in Zoom, because what happened was that we had a limited number of people who could join Zoom back then. So at 100, there were tons of people. We passed 100 people and a lot of people couldn't join in anymore. So they were stuck. So we quickly had to upgrade. But these meetings are really essentially for leadership to share what they're doing, what they're working on, other team leaders, or to share what latest things that they have been working on. Sometimes we invite a customer to share a customer story. They happen every 2 weeks. They used to be once a month. Now we're doing them every 2 weeks because we have so many things happening really fast. And they're a great way to see everybody's faces, but also it's keeping that transparency in a more human way, rather than just putting it in the newsletter or on Slack, and letting other people, giving them the stage to share something really cool. We have also a thing called Friday Fun Fact, which we do every Friday. It's just, you know, as the word says, it's just a question that I ask. Sometimes I get over 100 people replying, but it's also just a little thing that people are expecting now every Friday. And sometimes the questions are really, this one's pretty soft and easy, but we have some really absurd questions coming up. So that's just a fun way to get to know other people better and see if there's, you know, we maybe share some similar passions or similar experiences. In Slack, we also have a kudos channel to recognize other teammates who have lived by our values. So like I said before, our culture is not just about having a manifesto on our website. We really try to see in different ways how we can make the values an integral part of how we actually behave and work day by day and live. So for example, whenever somebody wants to thank somebody else for something they've done, what you see on the right-hand side are our values. So they will use a hashtag at the end of their recognition to say, this is the value that this person showed by doing what they did, which they did really well. So that's been also a good way for people to remember what our values are, because that's not always easy. And these values are not set in stone. We came up with them together with leadership team and the rest of the company last year at a company retreat, but we do think there's maybe too many, so we might reduce them a little bit. Another thing that I'm a huge fan of are warm-ups and energizers to start the meeting. So what we did, for example, today, you come at a webinar, you're kind of waiting for something to happen and then you start, right? But I really like doing different activities at the beginning of a meeting, or even the all hands company meeting with over 200 people. I find an exercise that we can do in MURAL. So the one that I'm showing here was, it was a game that we played. So basically everybody got these 3 rectangles where they could draw inside of. And so they had to pick somebody on Zoom without telling them. So I would just like look at Zoom and pick somebody and say, okay, I'm gonna draw this person. So the first square, you had 1 minute to draw the person with your right hand, or the hand that usually you use to write or draw. So that could have been your left hand. The second square, you had to switch hands and draw the same person. And the third one, you had to close your eyes and draw the person by memory using our own software. So this was, as a facilitator, this was really fun to watch because you could see all these drawings popping up on the whiteboard. But also I was looking at Zoom and I was seeing who wasn't closing their eyes and I could call them out. So I just took screenshots of people when they weren't closing their eyes. I was like, hey, Emmanuel, you're not closing your eyes. So they're like, I'm closing my eyes, I'm doing it. So it was hilarious. And I have a link here, which I will share, yeah, this takes you to a blog post I wrote with a whole series of online warm-ups and energizers that you can immediately use. It also explains the difference, right? So a warm-up for me is more something that you can use at the beginning of a meeting to kind of get to know each other, like an icebreaker. And an energizer is something that I would use maybe in the middle of a long session. Let's say you're doing like a 3-hour training or workshop, and then you can kind of, you know, take a break, come back. People need to get their energy up again. So there's a more energetic, fast-paced kind of activity that we can do online. This is another thing that we started, I think, last year at some point, which was a don't do this channel in Slack. So the idea was that we all make mistakes. That's absolutely normal as humans. And we want to make sure that people don't repeat the same mistakes and they can learn from what we've done wrong. So in this channel, there's not a lot happening, thank goodness, because it means we're not doing too many mistakes all the time. But people will share the mistakes that they've done. So here Haley was saying, you know, don't, you know, put a meeting on calendars without planning it beforehand and so forth. And it's just a really nice way of sharing what we can do better. And it's also great to see, you know, leadership also messing up, or a manager messing up, right? So we're all human in that. This I'm sure you're all familiar with by now after COVID, but we definitely have social hours. Well, one thing we've done, which has been quite nice with some of the teams, is, for example, if they're all located in the same region, like in Argentina, we sent a package with, I think it was like 7 beers in a box, and they all have the same 7 beers. And then while you're doing the social hour, you can kind of pick the same beers, feel like you're a little bit more connected or not, or do a beer game. But it's nice to know that, hey, we all have like the same box. We also did like a whole proper gift box in May, where we sent lots of other little gifts and little champagnes and little things. So it was really nice. It wasn't just alcohol, by the way, I'm just saying that, but there's definitely other things besides alcohol, stickers and t-shirts and things. So, and this is another thing that we started doing is a session called, what I like to call them power hours. Basically, these are sessions where people can kind of restore their energy, especially in the past months where it's been really, really intense with the lockdown to be at home. So the power hours can be facilitated by anyone internally at the company. So it's much more than a lunch and learn. It's not just like a show and tell kind of thing. It's some of them, for example, here we did a mindfulness, kind of body immersion mindfulness thing that was led by Daniel. But we've done like a rave with a DJ, like an actual person at Mural who knows how to DJ. So he DJed for 2 hours. And people will be working and listening to music and dancing at the same time. We've done a session on gender identity, so that was more of a discussion. We've done a vision board, kind of future-looking activity facilitated in Mural by one of our teammates. So it can be more creative. It can be more, physical with your body, dancing. It can be a lot of things, and it's just 60 minutes every 2 weeks. And I just try to find different people who want to experiment with different things. And then, a huge part of our culture is our company retreats. So before COVID, we did meet in person. We have done at least 3 company retreats in Argentina. So this photo is from last year. And we will tend to do, workshops or design sprints or something more like work related, but then also have, 2-3 days of non-work related things, like going to the beach somewhere and so forth. We've also done team offsites. So it's maybe just one team will go somewhere and meet face to face. This year we couldn't do that. So we did a 3-hour virtual retreat that included a trip around the world. So we had a bunch of us volunteer to become pilots and air hostesses, and then sent packages of backgrounds for Zoom. So everybody would switch to the same background at the same time. And we had everything from like airport announcements, gate number, tickets, QR codes to take you to places. And then we had escape rooms, virtual escape rooms. We had a Mural band record a song and put it together. And we had like a mini concert at this point. So it was a really, really fun thing. And we also sent the same gifts to everyone. So it was like a collection of props that they would have to take out at certain points of the virtual world trip and put it on. So it's maybe like sunscreen, and you had to put it on when you were at the beach, or you had something else. And it really was an experiential, experiential experience, which doesn't make sense, but it was something very immersive. That's what I was looking for. Very immersive. And it really made people feel like we were all in the same place. It was tons of fun. And there was a little after party afterwards as well. So these were all the fun things. But what I was trying to show here was really that aside from, us working in the way that we usually work, it's really important to understand what are the things out there that we can do to make this new way of working more connected and more human. And actually, I was speaking to our head of customer experience recently, and he said something that really stuck with me, which was, we're working in a 20th century context, but with a 21st century mindset. So there's this whole thing about, the future of work, and these are the new tools and technologies that we have to use, but then you look at the actual context and it's still very traditional. And so it's definitely time for us to also switch up the context and not just the mindset, especially as we're going to move forward and make a lot of changes after the pandemic is not over yet, right? So with the pandemic going on, we're going to have to make a lot of changes. And I don't want to just end on that note. There is something I wanted to do. I wanted to invite you all to this. And before I invite you all, I'm just going to zoom out, because what you've seen here is the actual product that we create. So this is a mural. Everything is locked down here, except a few things. So what I will do here is I will send the link in the chat, because I will bring you all to this area. I want you all to, based on what I just presented, vote, and I'll show you how that's done. Vote on one thing that you will try out with your teams. So first, the chat, second, the link. Then you can unmute yourselves, by the way, if you want to say something, because I'm not hearing anybody at all. But what you will see, so make sure you're looking at your browser and not in Zoom, that you're clicking in the right place, because I'm sharing my screen, so it may be a bit confusing because you're seeing the same thing twice. So as you come in, you will all come in as an animal because you are anonymous. So you have the hippo, the giraffe, the fish, and some people have added their names like Klaus. So right now, as more and more people are coming in, so we have 13 people there. I'll just wait a little bit. There's some sticky notes here. There's the pink ones that are focused around the collaborative things that I mentioned. Maybe some of these things you're already doing, by the way, and that's totally okay. And then there's the yellow ones, which are focused around the culture rituals that I mentioned. Ooh, there's a gentleman in there. I love the person whose name is Gentleman Technologist, love it. So yeah, somebody added a sticky note, that's fantastic. But right now what we're going to do is I'm going to start a voting session. So don't click on anything. The voting session, I will give everybody in the mural one vote, and I will put the timer on for 1 minute. And basically, I want you to vote on one thing that you will do with your team. So as soon as you click on a sticky note, you will have voted. If you want to remove your vote because you've accidentally clicked on the wrong sticky note, if you hold down, let me see. Yeah, if you hold down your shift key and you re-click on so you should have like a little circle that appears when you click somewhere. So click on a sticky note and there'll be like a pink circle with a number. That is your one vote. I see that some people have voted. Some people are still reading and reflecting. That's okay. Actually, I'm not going to vote because that's going to maybe change. I'm already doing all these things. Maybe I'm thinking, which one can I do better? Actually, I'll do the all hands. Okay, let's see. There's 8 seconds left. So if you click on a sticky note. All right, time is up. So I'm going to end the voting session. All right, so now you should, on your screen, you probably have the voting results showing. So the ones that have gotten the most type of votes are defined types of team meetings, interesting, and the weekly fun fact. And then if you scroll down, you see all the others. Fantastic. So that's the first thing I wanted to do. And then, oops, that's not where I wanted to go. 1 second. If you go down just a little bit, but I will summon you because as a facilitator, I can summon people to certain areas. Okay, so I'm going to summon, everybody should now be seeing what I'm seeing, which is, you'll see a line here, like a spectrum, and I just want you to read the question and look at that. And how confident do you feel about setting up an effective hybrid workplace? So thinking about, I have an office and I may have people working remotely. Put your cursor, you don't have to click anything, just put your cursor somewhere and kind of move it around, because when I move it, then I see, so you see like little mosquitoes flying around. Perfect. So people are kind of in the middle. I'm wondering if there's anybody who's like super confident. And David is in the nope. That's all right. Okay, so Ross is pretty confident. He's flipping his hair. All right, perfect. That was just a little poll that I wanted to see. Not bad. I hope that if you were in the nope before, I hope that now you're in the sure, kind of. And eventually we'll all become like Ross and like flip our hair a little bit. So that's it. Thank you. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. You're welcome to browse around the mural afterwards and navigate it. And I'm ready to answer any questions from anyone. Have we got any questions?
Hi, I wanted to ask, where do you get training for this? I mean, making these different things on Mural. How can you get trained for that?
So training for Mural comes in different ways. We have a a weekly demo that you can, I'll send some links in the chat, where you can look at how, how it works. We also have a very cool event. It's a webinar that happens every Friday. It's called Mural Backstage Pass. And the Mural Backstage Pass, what I like more than the demo is that it actually takes people who are working at Mural into there'll be like a theme. And then we're actually working in real time, showing you how we use Mural. So that gives you a lot of inspiration. And then we have a lot of YouTube videos, and we also have a learning platform, which was just launched. So I'm going to send a few links your way, because that's going to help you for sure.
And one very specific question. I've been part of many mural training programs that I'm always wondering, can we copy some of that stuff and, paste it to some other mural? Is it possible also? This is specific.
So you want to copy elements from one mural into another one and make your own?
Yes, that's the question.
I mean, if you have access to a mural, you can do that. Also, what we have within the software is we have a lot of templates. So if you start a mural, it will ask you, do you want to start a blank mural or do you want to start from a template? And I have to say the templates are very, very detailed, and then you can remove what doesn't work for you. But we also have instructions for facilitators and things like that. Like, it's super detailed. So the link I sent now is a link to all our webinars. We have Introduction to Mural, which is our demo from our customer experience team. We have Mural Backstage Pass that changes every week. That one's more interactive. Yes, Klaus asked, can I share my own template publicly? I believe you can. But
Thank you, Laila, by the way. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. No worries, no worries. Can you share a template publicly? Klaus, I'd have to double check on that, because I don't know if they've changed something with templates recently. But technically you can, because I made a template once for like a team, like a remote team feedback, and then I shared it in a blog post, and then everybody could use it. So that was a long time ago, but yes. So question from Marcus. How do you folks overcome the time zone issues with Slack conversations? Okay, so one thing I've asked everybody to do, and I'm actually writing the Slack guidelines right now, which is very, it's very timely. Asking, first of all, everybody to complete their Slack profile, not only with their names and their job titles, but also adding their time zone. So that first of all, I can go into Slack and say, oh, okay, Marcus is based in that time zone. I know that he's not going to reply to me between this and this time if, we're not overlapping. That's super helpful. And then just building a how can I say, a habit of making people understand that if you send a question, then the person is not replying to you immediately, that's okay, either because they're in a meeting or they're in a different time zone. So as long as you're not, constantly pushing that person to be like, hey, why aren't you not replying? I guess that's how we overcome the time zone issue with Slack.
I guess, so
yeah,
specifically, sorry to, yeah.
No, that's fine.
Kind of specifically, the problem we've had, I've been on a team spread over multiple time zones before, and team conversations would happen in Slack that then basically got scrolled up. And new people, like, you'd sign in at 9 o'clock in the morning to find that there was a really interesting conversation that happened 3 hours ago that you've got no chance of joining in on. There's no way of like making your point on that. And so this kind of rolling conversations that happened, and everyone kind of decided, yep, that's what we're going to do. Only the people who actually went online at the point that chat happened kind of missed out the whole consensus.
Yeah, then I think that's more an issue of decision making, right? Because I mean, when we have conversations that I want to get involved in, I will get involved in the next morning, even if nobody's online. That's, I'm one of those few people in Europe, so I see things later in the US. And I'll add my bit in the thread or whatever, if that's just a conversation. But if it's something about decision making, like what you're saying, that means that the process hasn't been set up for how your team is going to make decisions, right? So that's what I would focus on is, okay, to make certain decisions, we need approval from this and this, like from everyone, right? Or we're going to make them outside of Slack during a meeting, or we're going to publish something in Basecamp or Asana or whatever it is that you're using, and people can vote for something, for example.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But I think that's what's missing, because if people are just like, oh yeah, let's just go with this because we're online now, then that's not a decision-making process.
Yeah. Okay.
Or it is, but not an inclusive one.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right. Any more questions? I was looking at the chat, but I didn't see any.
Hi, you talked about the fact that you might be writing a document at the moment around etiquette for Slack and using kind of chat tools. And we've done something similar around the fact that it can be quite intrusive to message people on Slack.
Yeah.
And Teams is what we use, because it kind of demands an instant response. It's almost like you're tapping someone on the shoulder saying, turn around and talk to me now. And we found that for certain kind of conversations, to kind of maintain that asynchronous way of doing things, emails can actually still serve quite an important role if it's something that you don't need an instant response for, something that maybe suit itself to a bit of a longer format kind of message. We have in some instances kind of pushed people to think about, can it be an email, rather than just hitting someone up on Slack. How do you feel about that kind of stuff? Do you guys still use email a little bit, or do you find it?
So yeah, that's a good point. Mural is heavily reliant on Slack, I would say, for the better and the worst. I'm not a fan of email at all. What I've seen happening is, as we're hiring very fast right now, there's some people who are coming with different habits. So some of them are very, they're still stuck in email when it comes to making decisions. So I see, 5 different emails with 5 different topics. I don't think that's great, for the reason that you can't then include somebody in the, if you actually add somebody into that email thread, you can, but it just becomes an annoying thread. Slack is good to make channels and those kind of things where you can bring people in, but then things get lost. What I found was more helpful in my previous company, which is a habit that I'm trying to bring into Mural, is everything that is related to getting something done, task related, project related, to use something like either Trello or Asana or something like that, where you have a project. It's kind of like the email, but it's, instead of an email, it's a task, or a card or something on a Kanban board. And then you have all the conversations about that in that thread, and anybody can find it, anybody can join, anybody can leave. That's the problem I have with email, is that you can't join or leave. You're either stuck in there or you're not in the loop and you're catching up. The other great tool that I had used at the time was Basecamp, where you can kind of create these documents with clients, where you can add them or remove them. So it was internal and external facing. I found that more helpful.
Yeah, great. Thank you.
Welcome.
Laïla, you mentioned Confluence, and that was something that was mentioned in our last webinar as a really good place to keep company documentation. How easy is that to set up? Do you need a certain person who's going to administrate it? How do you decide what goes into that? Because that seems like quite a sensible way of the whole company accessing information, but that seems maybe quite a daunting task if you've got 270 people.
Yeah, so yes, we started using Confluence this year. Currently, the person who kind of owns it is me. Of course, I need IT's help because they have to set things up, and we're very big on security and things like that. But what I did was I kind of introduced it first by creating a newsletter in Confluence, and then sharing that with everybody, and inviting first team leads and managers and making them set up workspaces. I think it was pretty intuitive, in the sense that we at Mural also, our own product has workspaces and things like that. So Confluence also has this idea of workspaces. You can kind of think of them as folders in Google Drive or Dropbox or something like that. I find it's a very powerful tool because it's very easily searchable, and the integrations are really good, especially with engineering teams and other teams that need it, like Jira and other things that I'm not even aware of probably. So I don't think it was too complicated. And what's nice is that the interface always looks the same, so you're not messing up the format too much. You know what I mean? But I think it's good to have, yes, somebody who owns it and who has a good idea of how it works. I'm still learning. And somebody who's going to chase teams and be like, hey, this isn't updated. Can you add this? Can you add that? I think what helped with us is that we already had a really crappy wiki, and then we were transitioning to Confluence. So by pinging each person, being like, hey, can you bring yourself over, by doing that, then a lot of people got to understand what it was. If you had to start from scratch, it might be a little bit more difficult because you don't have that habit yet. Yeah. And then the other thing I would say to make it more of a habit is every time somebody asks a question, note that question down and provide the answer in the wiki. So it may be that each team has an FAQs page, for example, which is what we're trying to do with 200 something people. You're going to have a lot of questions. And also we want to change like the Slack naming convention. So that's very messy right now, but at least having each team Slack channel, like if they have 4 or 5 Slack channels, having them start with like product feedback, product updates, product this, product that. And then within each channel, link the wiki page that is related to that topic in that channel so that people can easily find that. So when you're a remote first company, all these things come very automatic, but when you're like in our case, like an office culture as well, it doesn't. So it takes time and training to do that.
Cool.
That's a long answer. Thank you everyone who thanked in the chat. I guess we have time for like a few, maybe 2 more questions or something, depending on how much I ramble. Any more questions? I have a question for maybe people here is, or people who have the video on, like how many of you think you have good meetings online? Maybe thumbs up if you do. Ross is pretty confident. Oh, Ross is the flipping the hair, Ross. Is that very confident, Ross? Okay. Umar says, Ross, I'm curious to know what makes your meeting good. Like how, because I have a lot of people complaining about bad online meetings.
Yeah, so when it comes to meetings, and for context, a lot of my work is a lot of students and clubs. So there's a lot of tech savvy people that I'm working with. And having like constant Zoom norms, if we're meeting on something, of just naming conventions, having like an icebreaker, all the warm-ups and energizers that you suggested in Mural has are great ways. But just setting like a quick agenda, like having nothing over, like we try to be like 40 minutes max, like when it comes to like running efficient, fun meetings, because Zoom fatigue is a real thing. And then if we're using Mural, just like having everything locked down, it takes to like, just making sure that no one like can mess up the thing that we're working in. If it is Mural, if someone is new to it, just like giving the space to do onboarding, icebreakers. It's a lot of people meeting each other for the first time on the meetings that I facilitate. So the icebreakers and just setting up conversations tend to be a great way to bring people together and really build community as a big focus of what we're doing. So that's what drives the meetings, and it is all remote anyway, so it lends itself to making those community interactions happen.
Yeah, well, I'm glad to hear that that you're applying all these things that I mentioned as well previously. And I find it interesting to observe how other people do meetings. And I really think that, as I mentioned before, facilitation is a skill to be learned by everyone at this point. And it's not just like, oh, you are the facilitator, so you're going to facilitate. No, because you're all part of this meeting with me. And also, what happens if my connection disappears, then I fall off the call, then somebody else has to take over, right? So we have to also think of these like technical things that maybe in an office meeting you wouldn't think of, because the person wouldn't disappear just like that.
Yeah, and bouncing off that too, we have like an air traffic controller. So you have the front man facilitator, and then the people in the back end that are the ones that you ping when they're doing like, hey, I need like help for a webinar like this. Like they would be the one fielding questions. So you have like the host and then the presenter, that so everyone knows who to go to when they're meeting, or if they need to ask questions, or they can do the tech support things while someone else is conducting the meeting. So usually having a team, especially in the remote world, is pretty helpful for any type of public facing meeting.
Absolutely. Yeah, totally agree. I like that you call it air traffic control. I just call it backstage, but I think air traffic control sounds more Like you're orchestrating a lot.
Yeah.
Any more questions? Just checking here. Hard to see sometimes on Zoom with like no visual indication. All right. Well, David and Mike, I'll pass it on to you if you want to add anything.
Thank you, Laila. Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone, for attending. I'll let Mike do the wrap up. I think he's got a few things that he'd like to say. If he can unmute himself.
There we go. I'm back. Yeah, I just wanted to say thanks everyone for joining, and thank you to everyone who's helped us. David and I created this. Has almost been like a little mini series. Started out with quite a simple question of how's everyone adapted to being remote in COVID, and we ended up doing a huge survey and a poll of people, hundreds of people. We created a report. We did. This is now webinar 3. We've created lots of content. There's lots of stuff on YouTube, and I think there's lots of really insightful bits of information that we can all learn from. We've had some really great people on our panels. So if remote is something that you've done because you've had to, I think we can all probably agree that we've done an all right job, but it's not perfect. I think we've got some great material that we want to share, and it's all readily available and free. And I think the most important thing as well is for David and I, we don't want to do webinars for the sake of it. There's a lot of noise out there, especially in the recruitment world, feedback, suggestions of topics, things that people are struggling with and would welcome some help on. We've got a great network of people, as you can see today. Give us some insights. What do you want to know? What do you want to find out more about? And that gives David and I a bit of a direction to try and answer some questions for you. So yeah, thanks everyone. Thanks Laila. And Dave, is there anything you want to add?
No, just obviously I think I said it at the beginning, but if anyone wants any information from this webinar, we'll be recording it, so we'll send you the link if that's okay with Laila, and we'll check that.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, and then anything else, just drop us a message, and just once again, thank you, Laila, for a brilliant talk.
Thank you everyone for being here.
Yeah, thank you guys.
Bye.
Thanks soon. Bye.